This week, I have a very special guest. For those less familiar with the story of D+D, Davina and I met 15 years ago in our early 20s. We then traveled the world photographing weddings, started a photo post-production studio that grew bigger than our wildest dreams, and had two little ones, Max and Charlie. We have done everything side by side, and although it hasn't always been the easiest, it has forced us to grow so much and come to a place of radical honesty with one another. Our spiritual journeys are immensely intertwined in the most beautiful of ways. With our recent move from Canada to Costa Rica, we decided to sit down and reflect on the path that got us here and some of the personal inner struggles currently taking up space. Before jumping into it, I want to quickly mention Golly apple cider vinegar gummies. ACV is an ingredient that has been used for centuries as a traditional remedy for digestion, gut health, and appetite. For anyone who has tried drinking raw apple cider vinegar, you can probably attest to how disgusting that process can be. Luckily, Golly has formulated a delicious recipe, making it super easy to get your daily dose of B9, B12 vitamins, and of course, apple cider vinegar. If you would like to give it a try, head to golly.com and use discount code DanielKudish to get up to 47% off your order, along with free shipping. Again, visit golly, GOLI.com, and use code DanielKudish, all in one word, at checkout. And now, my conversation with the one and only Davina Palik.
Hi.
How you doing?
Good.
Good.
Feels weird to be sitting here and recording our conversation because we're always sitting here and not recording our conversation.
It's funny how when you put a microphone to your face, like the whole dynamic changes. I feel like we've tried this before, just like casually walk and record our conversation, and it made for like an awkward time.
Totally.
Yeah. How you feeling today?
I feel good. Today's a microdose day, which always gives a little like extra peace. I also did breath work this morning, so I'm writing that a little bit. And yeah, a lot of things in the works right now. I'm creating a lot of stuff, which feels exciting, brings up a lot of stuff, but also is ultimately exciting.
Do you want to talk about some of the things you're creating right now?
Ooh, it's going to be hard to focus because it is not focused. It's a little all over the place. I am, as you know, doing a breathwork facilitator training right now, and because I'm so like gung-ho on this, I'm on week 3, even though it's only been like 3-4 days. It's a self-paced program, so I'm just like zooming through it because I really enjoy it, and I'm like, let's get to the point where I can call myself facilitated in breathwork 300 hours. Ironically, well, not ironically, it's pretty appropriate, I wrote about that this morning. I journaled about the idea of like being in an in-between stage, being so uncomfortable for me, and how I always want to like push through and be on the other side. And yeah, this training's kind of revealing a lot of that too.
Are there times in your life that you can recall where you have felt like you've arrived somewhere, or is the feeling always there?
Like, I'm done.
Exactly.
Well, you know, as a wedding photographer, I felt like I had that feeling a lot with like the projects. Like I really enjoyed seeing a project through and having these images to show for it, delivering them to the clients, creating the album, and then like moving on to the next one. So that feeling was there. In terms of like my growth as a wedding photographer, I never got to the point where I was like, perfect, I'm done learning. So no, probably not in terms of, in the context of growth and all of that.
Why do you think it's so hard to like sit? Like, what is the discomfort of the in-between stage?
It's the unknown. Like, I think, just what is it going to look like? And like, can you get me to a result so now I know what it is? It's control in that sense as well. Yeah, I think that's what it is for me.
Yeah. All right, let me backtrack. I don't typically do an introduction of the guest. I do it recorded separately.
Oh shit.
So I'm not gonna introduce you here. But
Oh, I thought you were going to say, but this time I will, because you're so freaking special. Okay.
no, I'll save the special for my recording. But when I share my spiritual journey, I often reference you in it because I feel like you started having your awakening before I did with your trip to Japan. And I don't typically dive into your story because it's your story to share. But I thought it would be a good place to start and just kind of fill in the couple of years before my own journey started.
Oh my gosh, how long is this podcast?
As long as we want. We can go 4-hour Joe Rogan style.
Okay, so gosh, it's hard to say. Definitely the trip to Japan. I just recently finally posted it on my website in my journaling or my journal section. So I got to revisit a lot of the lessons I learned on that trip. Basically, I mean, to track back a little bit, that trip was kind of like one of the first times that I felt like I was really listening to a calling from the universe. You know, you and I were in Amsterdam. It was your birthday. We were on our way to a wedding in Germany, I believe. So we had flown through Amsterdam, super jet lagged in the lobby of the hotel, and you're checking in, and I'm just like browsing the book collection, and they have this book, Epic Hikes Around the World or something of that sort. And I open up to this page on like the Kumano Kodo, which is like an ancient pilgrimage in Japan, and it looks beautiful, and I just was like, oh, I'm gonna do this. And it made no sense because I'm not very athletic and wasn't a hiker then, nor do I really call myself one now. And yeah, I was just like, yeah, I need to do this. I've always felt very connected to Japan. We had been a couple times before, and even as a kid, I was super into anything Japanese, and my best friend in elementary school was Japanese, and I was just, yeah, fascinated, but also it felt like I knew it already. Like I really do believe that I've had a past life, a significant past life in Japan. And yeah, so I was like, I want to do this hike. I just feel like I need to, and I kind of had it in the back of my mind, and obviously shared that with you. I read Wild? Is that right?
The
Cheryl
Reese
Strayed
Witherspoon movie?
I mean, yes, the movie, but the book by Cheryl Strayed.
Yeah.
I don't know why Wild is sounding off right now to me, but anyway. And yeah, obviously her experience was way more intense. It was like months of hiking, and she left everything behind, and you know, having like, I think Charlie was like 1 at that point or something. She was very little, so I wasn't gonna leave all of you for months to hike the world, but I thought this would be perfect for me, and was just like got more and more into the idea. And yeah, for my birthday you surprised me with a plane ticket, and to me that was so much more than just being like, here's a lot of money I spent on a plane ticket. It was more about like you showing me that you would hold down the fort while I was gone with our 2 little kids, and that you would give me that space, and you would allow me to have this experience. I think like you showed up for me in that way. Like, I don't know that, I mean, I couldn't have done that without that support, and that just knowing that you were holding that down for me. And also the push, it gave me the push that I needed to do it. And yeah, sorry, I'm taking the really long way to get to this hike, which I finally did. And it was just, I can't say it was just like magical and like all of the ways that it probably maybe could be for me today with where I'm at in my spiritual journey. But back then it was exactly what I needed. It was just time alone to just walk in the forest, like absorbing the energy of that ancient forest where like for thousands of years people have walked seeking answers or giving thanks or connecting to nature, and just all of that was in that forest. I felt it. The lessons that I got from that experience were just, it was endless. It was just constant. I felt like the forest was almost like speaking to me in every way, and I lost like half of my toenails as a result of this hike because I was very unprepared. My boots hadn't been properly broken in. My backpack was probably heavier than it should have been. I was probably not in as good of shape as I should have been to take that on. I was like, it's just walking, you know, I can walk for like 7 hours up a mountain. But turns out it's a lot harder than it seems. And yeah, so I came back from that. I don't know how it was for you, or if you can recall what it was like for you, what my energy was like when I came back, but I felt really like I had learned a lot, and I had really like learned to trust myself. Like that was one of the biggest things. It's like I was on my own, and I was like, I got this, and I can rely on myself. Sorry, I asked you a question that I'm not going to let you answer, but the trust thing, as someone who like also diving into everything here, but you know, who has suffered like childhood sexual abuse and having to like come to terms with the fact that I didn't trust myself in a lot of ways, because I did feel like a lot of that was my fault to a certain extent. Like it's something that I could have prevented if I had resisted or spoken up sooner or something. So only, yeah, during that hike, I felt like I did start to regain that trust that I had lost over, you know, a long period. Whew, that's a lot.
I do remember you coming back and things feeling different, but I don't think I had the awareness at the time to, you know, fully pick up on it and identify what was different or how different it was the same way that I would today. I feel like today I would pick up on your energy and just like everything that might have shifted.
Yeah.
And we could dive a lot deeper into, you know, some of the transformation you would go through today.
I remember it being like a bit of a concern for me when I came back, and I did express that to you at the time, because I felt like something had been opened up inside of me. I really started to feel like this spiritual connection that was beginning, or returning, I should probably say, because we're all spiritual beings ultimately. And I was starting my mentorship, or I was starting to work with, at that point, with Dave Moss, who you interviewed in your first podcast. That was just before I left, I started working with him. So he kind of was a big part of that experience as well, you know, of kind of integrating some of the lessons that I learned, and that was really good timing for that. Why are you smiling?
No, I'm smiling at Dave and like his, you know, his involvement in both of our early, you know, stages of the journey. Like I also feel that I wouldn't have necessarily like kickstarted all of this if it wasn't for the conversations I had and working with him.
Yeah, and it's interesting because, you know, when I kind of stopped working with Dave, I started working with his wife, Abby, in her mentorship program for 6 months, which I just completed fairly recently. And now you're about to embark on that same mentorship. So yeah, one might say you follow in my footsteps.
One might say. What were like the months following that? Because I feel like shortly after that is when you brought on the idea of ayahuasca, and obviously you didn't push me or force me to go with you, but it's something I feel that we explored together. Yeah. What do you remember of that time?
I am so fuzzy on this, and I think you are too. It's so weird. Like what we're reading, like this weird like haze that and I'm usually pretty good at recalling this type of stuff, but I don't remember how this all came about. I think the thing with ayahuasca, and I've seen it happen to other people too, is that like it kind of like shows up in your life and just keeps calling you in different ways and from different sources, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I keep hearing about this, and now it's speaking to me, and now you start doing your own research, and I guess that's how it came about. There was no one specific thing. I know I did talk to Dave about it because he has had an ayahuasca experience himself. But I remember talking to him at the time and being like, that sounds fucking terrifying. I am not doing that. But somewhere along the line, I obviously changed my mind. But yeah, I don't know. But to answer your question, what were the months like afterwards? I think I often struggle coming out of a really deep experience. I had the same experience when I did ayahuasca. I had many months where I struggled, which I'm sure we'll get into at some point. And I think this was similar, you know, it's like I come back and I'm like, I am changed forever. New Davina is going to have so many like different insights, and she won't have any of those bad habits, and she's going to be like the best parent and never get impatient, and I have all these expectations. And I was like that, my expectations with ayahuasca, as much as I probably wouldn't have admitted it, because I knew better than to like make those kinds of, not promises, but have those kinds of expectations. But yet I still kind of was doing it, you know? And then it means that when you come back from something like that, it obviously you're not completely changed and healed, and you need time to integrate. And yeah, I think I've always just put so much pressure on myself to like be perfect. And even in spirituality, I've like continued to like think that I needed to be perfect, you know, like I'm the perfect student of nature after this hike, and I've now integrated all of the lessons.
Something that you said kind of identifies the way that I've been feeling the last couple of weeks, which is like expecting yourself to be different on some level because you've touched something or felt something or experienced something.
Yeah, it's such a trap.
And then being like, oh, no, I'm still spending too much time on my phone. Oh, I'm still impatient with the kids. Oh, I'm
still human.
Yeah. And then like beating yourself up about it, and, you know, just, I don't know, feeling like this heavy energy. Like I feel like I have a lot of different things in motion like around me, but it is definitely one of the things. And I recognize the things that aren't serving me well right now. And I just have a really hard time like adjusting and letting them go. Like being like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to spend less time on my phone, and then it's the end of the next day. I'm like, oh, fuck, I still spent like way too much time. Tomorrow I'm not going to snap at the kids, and then fuck, today I snapped at the kids. You know, like I'm just like aware of like the things I want to change, and I'm having a really hard time making the change.
Change is a big word. It's like such an action word, you know, and it's so like, I don't know, it's lofty. Aware of the things I want to change, but you can also just be aware, period.
Yeah.
You're so not convinced.
Yes, but...
Yes,
and they are things I want to change, you know, that I want to adjust and like be more in greater balance or harmony with in my life, and or just make space for other things to replace those things, you know, like spending time on the phone is a good example. Like I just feel like I could be spending more of my energy in other places, and it's not serving me well, but I keep getting caught up in the loop every single day.
And what's your narrative with yourself when you catch yourself doing the things that you told yourself you were going to quote unquote change about yourself?
Yeah, there's definitely an element of like beating myself up over it, being like, or being like, oh, well, not today, you know, tomorrow. I'll try tomorrow. But it's like once it's been going on for many days in a row, the frustration just builds up, and then I end up spiraling down a little bit.
Yeah. The thing that's coming to me right now is something that like ayahuasca taught me again and again, pretty much every night that I sat for ayahuasca. It was to be gentle with myself. Mm-hmm. And it's okay to have like things we want to change, and to recognize that we're on a journey. But to just like, you're not going to get there by beating yourself up or by, you know, procrastinating, because then you're like villainizing this thing, and you're villainizing yourself for like falling into these habits that you know better, and like that's just not how you break those habits. I feel like the biggest change I've seen in myself, which is all of the expectations that I might have had, is being able to finally, and it's been a year since ayahuasca kind of like just again and again kept repeating to me, it was echoing in my head, be gentle with yourself, be gentle with yourself, is that lesson. Being aware of your behavior or certain patterns or of your thoughts and then just like forgiving yourself for it, instead of being like, wow, you're such a piece of shit for still thinking that, you should know better, or for doing that, or whatever it might be. And just be like, oh, you just thought that. You're not speaking very kindly to yourself, but I still love you.
Yeah.
Like you can love loving yourself in the things that you're doing. Like, it's just the hardest thing. Like, love yourself when you don't love yourself. It's like, I still love you even though you're supposed to be loving yourself and you're not doing that right now. Like, it's such a weird, like...
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I was going to say, is that, I recognize those lessons on like a cognitive mind level, but in the moment, I don't necessarily like feel it. So I can tell myself like, be gentle, let it go, it's all good, like I can tell myself those things, but I don't necessarily like allow myself to truly feel it. And to truly feel it is harder to apply, like it's what's, using words on yourself is one thing, like that's practical and everybody knows how to do that, but how to actually like be gentle and more loving with myself on like a emotional and like feeling level, that's a lot harder to do, even if I'm telling myself to do that.
Oh, there's so much I want to say about that. But what came to me is the lesson that my shoulder has taught me this year. So I've had this, like, as you know, or well aware of, this shoulder pain for like probably at least 3 years. And I've, was put it off and pushed through it, and, it hurts, but I probably just need to like ignore it and work out harder. And, I've pushed myself physically despite this pain that I had, until it became like worse and worse, and I just couldn't ignore it anymore. And then, went to see a specialist, and turns out I have this big rock essentially of calcium, like a calcium deposit in my shoulder that's been like destroying like ligaments and just like scraping the inside of my shoulder. And so no wonder I'm in pain, and my movements are restricted and all of that. And when I came here, so I tried to get a treatment, and it wasn't successful in destabilizing this calcium deposit, which was very discouraging. But when we got here to Costa Rica, just like 3 months ago, I had just had this treatment, which included a cortisone shot. So I suddenly was able to do all these things again, because while the root issue was still there, I didn't feel the pain anymore. So I, again, not having learned my lesson, continued to push through and did the super hard yoga classes and pushed harder at the gym, and was just like, yay, no more pain, let's keep going. And then sure enough, one day the cortisone shot just stopped working, or ran its course, and now I don't want to say then, because now I am facing like the most pain my shoulder has ever had. But in the last several weeks, since this pain has been worse than ever, I've had to do so much work with it, just like facing it and being like, poor you shoulder, like I have not been listening to you, and you don't deserve that, and I don't need to push harder at the gym, or all of this stuff that I was doing, thinking that it was for my benefit, but also, to be completely honest, for vanity reasons, thinking like my shoulders are looking more like, I don't know, I'm looking better, my physical body is looking quote unquote better, and I've got to keep pushing it because I need to keep this up. And I was putting so much pressure on myself, again, to look a certain way and be a certain way, and at the cost of my own well-being. And my body was screaming at me to stop, but I wasn't listening. And my relationship with my body, and specifically through the experience with my shoulder now over the last couple of weeks especially, has changed so much, because it was in these like more gentle yoga classes that I started going to, where I started modifying every pose so that I wouldn't put strain on my shoulder, and really listening. And whenever we're in this like surrender position, I would just hold my shoulder and often cry, and almost started seeing it like, what if you were my child? Like the people, the humans that we have the most compassion for are Max and Charlie on this planet, as much as sometimes we don't.
I don't know what you're talking about.
But like if it was them, you know, being pushed like that by somebody, I would have so much compassion for them. I would want to protect them. And I started seeing my shoulder and as an extension of my body, and as a representation of my body, as just with having so much compassion towards it, being like, I'm so sorry that I haven't been listening. I'm so sorry that I've been pushing you for these reasons that are so stupid. You are more important than those reasons. And like, I'm listening now. And it kind of opened up a lot of stuff about all the times in my life that I haven't listened to my body. And then it extends to my own intuition, and it extends to so much more. And through that experience, I really feel like I've gotten way more compassionate with myself and been able to see myself like more as like I need to take care of you, you know? And I don't know. It's the type of shift that's so new that I'm still having trouble fully articulating, but I'm just seeing it constantly over and over again. And at the same time, I do see myself still having moments of pushing. You know, I did a small workout this morning and I was like, I'm going to do abs because my core needs to like, you know, look a certain way. And I was like, no, we're not doing that again. What feels good right now? What does your body want? What kind of movement do you want? Versus like, what does the reflection in the mirror like, or what do you think the reflection in the mirror is telling you it needs? Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah. Did I get lost there? Did I land it?
You landed it.
So you can't force yourself to be more gentle with yourself, because that just goes against the whole purpose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been working so hard on just letting go and surrendering and taking a softer approach to life, but then sometimes I end up on the other side of the pendulum where like I'm way too passive. Like I feel like I accomplished nothing this week, you know, because I was not in a proactive, you know, mindset and just. So what? Yeah, so what? Nothing, but here I am on Friday, you know, beating myself up over the fact that I probably didn't accomplish very much, and then was resentful of that fact throughout the week as well as the week went on. There's definitely like a constant feeling that I need to produce something. Like not doing something, not producing something it feels incomplete. And I'm aware of like the conditioning and the programming and all of that. But I just feel like I'm capable of doing more, you know? But like by default, not because like I'm, you know, have been conditioned for that, not because I'm seeking validation, or I just know that I have the ability to build things and make them happen, and I want to be of service and I want to be used, and like I'm just like, please use me, please like use me for something. And then days and weeks go by where nothing happens, and yeah, it just builds up this like inner frustration.
Is your self-worth reliant on that productivity?
I wouldn't say my self-worth, but like my, you know, day-to-day joy and happiness. Like
you can't be happy or have joy without feeling like you're doing something?
So the root cause I think is like, I don't know what to do with my day if I'm not working on something. That's like the biggest thing, you know? If I had like a hobby, or I was building something, or, you know, like, I mean, like hammering like a nail into a piece of wood, like actually, you know, making something. I don't know, like I don't know what to do other than like the daily grind of getting the kids ready for school, going to the gym or yoga, and then going to the beach and swimming, but then it's too hot by the time it's 10 o'clock and we go out for breakfast.
Oh, wow.
And
tiny violin for you.
No, it's not that. It's more just like I find myself with like this gap in the day where like I don't know what to do. And
yeah, I totally relate to that and understand that. I think you and I like kind of the seesaw goes back and forth sometimes. Like I'm on a roll and I'm doing lots of stuff, which has been kind of the case this week, and you're maybe a little like less like riding some kind of energetic creative wave. So I totally get where you're coming from, and I hear like my own words echoing back to me as you're speaking. We are in a really weird place right now, and like collectively, yes, but also like you and I personally are in a weird place right now. It's that in-between stage that I was journaling about this morning that we're just talking about. It's like, yeah, we're not settled anywhere in our career or in our physical life. Like, we have no home. We're staying right now in this like rental house that's not going to be ours in like a week from now, until we move on to the next one. And there's no sense of really grounding and creating like your own home when you're constantly moving. And that can feel destabilizing. I know it does for me. And even what you're describing as like doing something and feeling like, you know, these kinds of activities that we need to do to keep ourselves like, to keep our home a certain way, they offer that outlet of action too. Like, I've been enjoying doing the laundry because it gives me like something to feel like we're getting our shit together as a family, or these little things. But I know you're speaking to something a lot bigger than that too, which is just the idea of like, I know what I'm doing, and what I'm doing is like fulfilling my purpose and the purpose that benefits the world around me.
Yeah.
That's a big one.
Yeah. This reminds me of a quote I saw this morning. Let me pull it up. It was really good. It really resonated with me. It says, "I wake each morning torn between the desire to save the world or to savor it. And then I realized that in a way the savoring must come first, because if there was nothing left to savor, there would be nothing worth saving." It's by E.B. White.
That's really good.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I am savoring, you know, being here and like our opportunity right now to take care of ourselves and to not have a overloaded schedule and for things to be slow. But then I get sucked into like the negative outlook and self-talk that can come from that as well. So it's just, yeah, I guess it's just like a bit of a weird, uncomfortable place at the moment.
It is uncomfortable. And what does it look like to like sit with that discomfort, you know, to just be like, okay, you're here. What do you want? What do you want to teach me? Or what can I learn from you? And I think one of the things is like seeing how your self-worth might be tied to, or I don't want to put words in your mouth, but from me, certainly, I've had to sit with this. But my own self-worth was tied into what I'm producing, or what I'm creating, what I'm doing.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to like distinguish, is it self-worth or just like day-to-day joy, you know, like what can bring me more joy?
It's interesting that you keep using the word joy in relation to like productivity and creation and like doing, because that's, yes, you can get joy out of your work or out of creating, but like joy can be found in like the smallest places. And like, you obviously know this, but like if what you're seeking is joy, then fucking seek joy. Don't seek productivity, you know?
Yeah.
You're like, I need joy. I need to produce. Yeah. God damn it, Daniel. Why are you producing joy?
I think for me, that kind of goes back to just struggling with play and, you know, tapping into like my inner child on a regular, sober basis, you know.
Play is hard for grown-ups. It's real grown-ups. I sound like I'm talking to the kids. We are grown-ups, apparently. But we're not. That's the thing. We're still like kids. They're still like the children. Our own inner children are still there, and like, what do they want? So yeah, how do you tap into that, you personally?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, for me, it's always been, you know, playing sports has always been a source of fun. But I think access to that is, you know, a little bit harder where we are a smaller community, less facilities for some of the sports that I enjoy. But also, I haven't tried very hard, so that's on me.
That also sounds like bullshit excuses.
Totally. On some level, I think it is. I want to backtrack to the timeline. You were saying things got kind of hazy after the Japan trips, and you often remember things well. And as you know, I struggle with remembering
I've noticed
a lot of things, be it like from long-term past memories to just short-term things that you might have said last night that I don't remember today.
or 5 minutes ago.
But funny enough, like when the pandemic started, like things are pretty clear from that point forward. The timeline, like I can remember much more how I was feeling during various stages and the things that we did as a family and where we've been and a lot of the smaller experiences.
Because time slowed down and we weren't traveling every other week or something, because we were traveling a ton before that.
Yeah.
Like so much. And then suddenly that all stopped.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it makes sense.
I remember like the yoga in our bedroom and getting
Sounds kinky, but it's not. Unfortunately, it's literally just yoga in the bedroom.
and you know starting to get into like Wim Hof breath work at the time, and then spring came around. We were really into like Kaigo and Avicii music, and we had a lot of dance parties.
A lot of dance parties with the kids. Yeah.
And then we spent like that whole summer like swimming a ton in the lake, and then we went off to ayahuasca in Costa Rica, and coming back from that and hanging out at that cottage for a week. And yeah, just everything is so much more vivid, you know, from the last like 2 years.
It was simpler life,
Yeah.
right?
It was.
None of the things you just talked about had anything to do with like the things you were creating or how you were being productive. It was having dance parties, and it was doing yoga, and it was swimming in the lake, and just like using your senses to enjoy life with no pressure of creating or producing.
Yeah. I really did feel that I came alive, you know, during that time, and ever since. And now it's just navigating some of the other things. And are we maybe trying to go back to like a life that's pre-pandemic? And maybe that's a bit of what I'm struggling with at the moment, you know, trying to go back into like a productive mode and trying to accomplish things as opposed to just enjoying life for what it is.
I cannot speak for you.
Please give me the answers, please. Yeah. Do you want to talk about how we've manifested our life here, or how we've manifested things in our career and our personal lives, you know, for 14 plus years?
It's so funny because, you know, you and I have talked about this recently, but like how much of our life we've just manifested forever without having any like idea of what manifestation actually is, or an idea of like steps to manifest, or even like what that word really meant, you know?
Yeah. If I can just interject, like for me, it was like a super magical concept where it was like, tap into like the 7D universal blah, 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 and ask for things and you shall receive them magically without knowing exactly how it happened.
Yeah, that's kind of what it is. No, not the way that we did it, I guess. I mean, the best example, I think, of how you and I manifested in our career was like the decision to go after destination weddings. Like, you know, we were shooting weddings in Montreal where we lived, and we had a great successful career. We were super busy. We were becoming better as photographers, but also we're like way overworked. And, you know, we were just like, this is not how I want to do this. There's a better way that's more in alignment for me and for us. And it was like, let's only shoot together. We only want to work together. We don't want to split up days anymore and work with like other photographers. We want to work together and we want to travel. We want to do weddings in these like exotic locations and meet different people and just have these beautiful backdrops and just like play with photography in a way that, you know, we felt we were stagnant being in the same city all the time. And we just decided that's what was gonna happen. It wasn't like, wouldn't it be great? It was just like, okay, that's what we're doing now. And like, how do you do that? And that's a question that people have been asking us like our entire career, really, since that did manifest. How did you do it? And it's like, we just decided that's how it was gonna be. And that meant that we were opening up our schedule literally for those weddings to come in. And it was just like refusing weddings in Montreal. Like, nope, sorry, we can't take that wedding. Oh, you're booked? Nope, we're not booked. We're booked for a future wedding that we're gonna get in some exotic location because we just believe that's what's gonna happen. Mm-hmm. And it really just did happen that way, right?
It did. And I'm trying to recall like how much visualization do you feel like, obviously we didn't like sit and we're like, let's visualize.
No, that's what we do now.
But did we use, you know, our imagination to kind of call that in? I feel like I did, and I feel like I've always done that. I always imagined, you know, certain things, and more often than not, they became alive. And to me, that's what manifesting is. It's like combining your power of imagination with concrete action steps to make that happen.
And the concrete action steps, they come from the opportunities that are directly in front of you. Right. Like, oh, look, here's an opportunity. Where do I go? How do I show up with this opportunity? Do I take it? Do I find a reason why it's not now, it's too soon, I'm not ready? You know, we do that in life all the time. Make up these like reasons why it's not ideal.
Yeah. What's messing with me like these days with that is like using my discernment with the things that are presented to me. Like, do I just like blindly follow something because it's in front of me and I don't know where it'll lead me? Or do I apply my judgment and gut feeling, intuition on it?
Both. I mean, first of all, if you're faced with a decision, you can talk to that part of yourself that's not your mind, that knows, you know, you sit with it. Like, I hear that all the time, like sit with it, and I use that all the time. I just had to sit with it. Like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, for me, it means literally just sitting there and like getting to a place it can be through breath or through meditation, but just even that, what does that mean? It just means like getting calm and getting quieter and not overthinking and not making the lists and not like, you know, and just being like, how does this feel in my body? And when I get to a calm enough place, like I just kind of know the answer. Now, do I do that all the time when I know, even like when I know I should? No, I definitely don't. Sometimes I'm like, can I just get the quick answer? And like surely my mind has an answer here, instead of taking the extra time to reach that quiet place. But yeah, I just feel like for me, it's really in my body, these answers often, like this like little yucky feeling in the pit of my stomach, or like my shallow breathing, or like even dizziness from stress of a decision. I'm like, this doesn't feel expansive and like exciting. It feels like stressy and yucky.
Very scientific.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I've been feeling the last couple of weeks. It's like not expansive and very contracted. And
what are you trying to force?
I don't know. That's
something, anything?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even know. I feel like if I knew, then I'd be able to kind of move through it a little bit faster.
I don't want to make judgments on you because I feel like I know you really well, and sometimes it's like I feel like I can read your energy, and I don't want to like assume that I know things that I might not know. And it's like this new territory I need to navigate with you, I feel. It's like
What's the new territory?
I just feel in you right now this energy of like, of pushing and hardness. Like, I know all the different sides of you that I feel. I know a lot of different sides of you, not all of them, because I'm sure there's some that you have yet to uncover for yourself. But yeah, lately I feel from your energy that it's like, there's like a hardness that's not always there. It's like something, I think I asked you that the other day when I put my hand on your chest, and I just asked you like, what are you holding on to that you need to let go of? That was just like, it just came.
Yeah.
You know, that's what I felt. And like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's an accurate feeling, but I don't know what those things are. What am I pushing against? What am I having a hard time letting go of?
Yeah, I feel like that comes in striving often. You know, it's whatever the opposite of surrendering means to you, you know? Mm-hmm. Of wanting things to be different than they are, of being like, why aren't things pushing forward? Why am I not seeing a result in XYZ? Why is the answer to what's next in my life not clear right now? You know, it's this frustration with what is still unknown.
Yeah. I think it's like multifaceted in the sense that it's like on the collective level, like seeing all the problems of the world and wanting that to change and having, you know, just feeling very powerless.
Yeah, you're very stuck on that.
I know, and it is hard to let it go, but at the same time, I think it's a source of discomfort for a lot of people right now, and it's not uncommon. Doesn't mean, I mean, I don't think it's a right or wrong thing, but I think it's a fact for a lot of people. But then, yeah, also just on a personal level, like this whole transition out of, you know, the identity of photographer and CEO into whatever it is that I want to do next. And I have some ideas and some aspirations, but you know, they take time to develop, and classes need to be taken, and business plans need to be written, and things need to happen in order to quote unquote get there. But then feeling kind of frozen in the present moment and not like, I'll correct that. Was it yesterday or the day before? Like I felt like a lot of things kind of opened up because I realized like how many classes I was enrolled in for the new year, and I was starting to really see this next stage for me and for us. And I was also drawing lessons from things that had happened to us and seeing why they had happened to us.
These misadventures we've had lately?
Yeah, a few. And yeah, all of it was kind of making sense. And I felt like it was a breakthrough, but then I woke up the next day and I was like right back to like just feeling frozen and heavy and yucky.
Yeah. I think you're looking for answers in your mind to things that like don't have answers in your mind. You're like looking to make sense of something. You're looking for like something to like show you a tangible answer. But I think what you need to work with is those feelings right now. Mm-hmm. Not any of the stories you've told yourself about why you're feeling the feelings. The feeling being like the yuckiness, the stuckness, the like whatever that stuff is, like that's what you sit with and that's what you look at. And not to get answers that you can then like explain, but just so you can feel it fully and, you know, yeah. That's what I'm feeling. Mm-hmm. And it's okay for this like period of time to be difficult. Like when you were talking about transitioning from CEO and photographer, and you know, it was easy for us to define to strangers who we just met, like, what do you do? Like, here's a nice little packaged answer that will satisfy you because you will get to paint your picture and make an opinion of me. Whereas right now, it's really hard to answer that question. And it's humbling to be in that position of now being like, I need to learn in order to step into these new roles that I see myself taking on and embodying like a new version of myself moving forward. It requires a lot of humility to be a student again and to not know and to be a beginner. I found that to be difficult, but there's also so much excitement and curiosity, you know, what it was like when we first started being photographers and shooting weddings, and how like you're thrilled with every new photo you take that's somewhat different, where you learn something and apply a new concept. And there's excitement and joy in that, you know, that you get to bring into this part too of, it's like we think that because we're now like in our mid to moving on late 30s that we are like beyond that for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know if you feel
I'll
that.
I'll admit, like, for sure, when I was like a teenager / young adult, it was always like a upwards, you know, trajectory.
Yeah.
Where
what happens when you get to the top?
Yeah.
To accomplish all of the things you wanted to accomplish. Then what?
Exactly. And as you know, I've had this realization, you know, at some point, was it this summer, where I just admitted to myself that I had accomplished pretty much everything that I envisioned as a teenager, which was, you know, a beautiful marriage and kids and successful career and financial success. And, you know, I definitely basked in that feeling of feeling that I had accomplished it. But now as time goes on, I'm like, okay, now what? And, you know, it's not like a full starting over. And there's almost like less momentum than when you're coming out of like your teenage years and like through college or education and into starting your career. Like you always have like this momentum pushing you. At least that's how I experienced it. I'm sure it's not the case for everyone, but my experience was one of like continuous momentum.
Or it's just a more obvious next step. It's not so much momentum as it is like, okay, now you do this. Okay, now you do this. Okay, you graduated from photography school. Okay, now start your business. Okay, now grow your business. Okay, now, you know, do this, do that. Okay, now get married. Okay, now have the first kid. Okay, now have the second kid. You know?
Right, it was like playing the expected role.
Yes,
of
and
society.
just kind of following what seemed obvious, you know? And not that any, you know, the common story is like, and then there's addiction, and then there's all of this, or actually the marriage is awful and behind closed doors. And like, I mean, it's not like that, you know?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, so I feel like I'm at the stage where the midlife crisis kind of like kicks in. Like
Time for you to have an affair or buy a fancy car.
No, but I totally recognize the like discomfort, you know, that I'm sure a lot of men feel and aren't necessarily in tune with their feelings or have the awareness to acknowledge what is happening and what is this discomfort. I'm just like aware of the discomfort. I'm not sure what it is or what it will lead me to or what the lessons are to be drawn from it, but I'm aware that there's like a discomfort. And I feel like this is the time in life where if I was more drawn to like distracting myself or numbing myself out from that discomfort, that's where like the affair could happen, or the fancy sports car, or the like, you know, some of the classic things that we're conditioned. And it's awful that we are conditioned to think that the midlife crisis is so normal, and it's normal to have this affair, and it's normal to like have the stupid sports car.
I don't know if it's normal so much as we're just so used to seeing ourselves fill voids with like consumerism or like attention. Like an affair is really just like, I need to feel good about myself, I need to be validated, and I'm going to seek that outside of here.
Yeah.
It's a void. The sports car is again like, I want an object to make me feel like I have this, therefore I'm worth something. You know?
I just feel like that storyline was presented to us, you know, countless times through, you know, whatever it is that we consume, you know, books, TV shows, movies.
It's definitely part of the narrative.
Yeah. Yeah, so I recognize like this moment of discomfort in my life, and yeah, just trying to live with it.
Yeah, it's a lot more uncomfortable to have to like actually just address it, or not address it, but sit with it and listen to it, than it is to actually like numb out for a while. But that's only on the short term, you know?
Yeah. Last night though, I had like a beautiful balance of like both, where, you know, you went out and I smoked a joint and danced in the living room and saged the house, and then sat and meditated for as long as I wanted to, until eventually, you know, I came out of it and I was like, now I'm gonna watch TV and eat some food. And like, it was like a bit of, actually for once I wouldn't even say that it was numbing out. Like I was just gonna like savor the things of life, you know? And I was aware of like not being like, okay, I meditated, now I'm gonna reward myself and watch TV and eat, you know? I felt like it came from a place of savoring life and just enjoying these things that are available to us.
Yeah. It's a delicate balance, but it can only be achieved like with awareness. Mm-hmm. And I think like if you do find that you did something to distract yourself or to numb out, it's being like, okay, I did do that. And that's it, you know? There's no like beating yourself up about it or being like, never again, or because when you are aware, like you just don't want to continue doing that because you know it doesn't really fill the void that you're trying to fill, or, you know, and that's not what you were doing last night, which is why you don't have the same kind of feeling towards it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It really does. What's your favorite thing about living here in Costa Rica?
Right now, the first answer that comes to mind is community. It's not why we moved out here, you know? Mm-hmm. It wasn't like the first thing on the list, but right now it's the thing that I feel, especially recently with all these misadventures that we've had, like the way that people show up for each other here in a small community, it is so special. And it's something I've never experienced before. Like when our car got stuck in the river and like people were pulling us out in like a few minutes and, you know, getting dirty in the mud, and then someone was driving by and was like, need a ride, hop on in. And it was just like community coming together to assist. And then when we don't have the car, and just, you know, asking somebody like, can I borrow your car for the day? Because I need to go deal with insurance stuff in the next city over. And yes, of course, go for it. Here you go. Here are the keys. And, you know, needing something and just knowing that like, and it feels good to reciprocate too, you know, not because you owe somebody a favor, but because like, it's just energetically the kindness is exchanged freely, and it's so beautiful and it's so like natural. Yeah, and I feel like people don't expect anything in return. Like the guy who, you know, got all muddy and pulled our car out of the river, like once he was done, it was like, bye, see you later. Never for a moment did he expect something. Exactly. Yeah, no, it was amazing to see. Yeah, I've always like heard, you know, the word community. Like I think it's a, what's the word? Buzzword. It's a buzzword, you know, that's thrown around quite a bit. Community, build a community, foster community. Yeah. And I don't know, I didn't fully know what it was until we moved here, and I'm like, oh, I get it. It's not like the friendships, yes, there are friendships developing as well, but it's just like a sense of reliance on other humans, and like not hiding behind like our professions or some kind of like hierarchy in society. It's just like, no, we're all human, we're all here, let's all just like help each other out and support one another. Yeah, this like myth of separation, as you know, you and I have both read Sacred Instructions by Sherry Mitchell, and oh gosh, the mouthful. Help me out here. The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible by Charles Eisenstein. Yes, I always get it wrong. And both of those books talk about this myth of separation, and I feel like that veil here is so much thinner. I think in general, Costa Rica, you know, the people of Costa Rica are like so much more connected to nature and to one another, and it's a blue zone here, and that's one of the biggest like criteria, if you will, of a blue zone, is that there is a sense of community. But again, as you said, I never really knew what that meant. You know, there's so many things that it's like love, like what is love? Until you've really experienced it, you can't describe it, or you don't know until you know. And that's kind of what community has been, the discovering of what that really means as a felt experience here. That's been probably my favorite thing.
I have to agree. Like, I've also really enjoyed it, and I think it's the fact that it was unexpected as well. You know, we had some friends that we had made coming into our life here, but just seeing how everybody really cares for one another and how you run into the same people, you know, as we ride our bikes around town and just waving to everyone. And
I just love that so much. Like the first few weeks we were here, like I shared this with you, but it was like the beginning of Beauty and the Beast. It's like bonjour, 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 except it's like hola in this case. Just like all of the people you know, and just like, even if it's people whose names you don't know, you run into each other so often that like you just say hi, and it's a beautiful thing to have, because you feel seen and you feel like you can then see others. And I think that's part of that. The myth of separation is of seeing each other as separate. And when you just feel connected to others, you can't go back to seeing things the way you saw them before, or to seeing people. Yeah.
This town feels like the right size, you know?
Yeah, now it's growing rapidly.
Yeah. But, you know, there's like the idea of like living on a commune with like 100 or 200 people, you know, which has its like appeals. But here there's like enough people that you see new faces and you don't necessarily know everybody, but there's still few enough people and it's small enough that you run into the same all the time. And that's kind of like that fine, delicate line of like a few thousand people living in the same town. That's really has been beautiful for me, and kind of in a weird way like gives me hope for you know, big cities where people are maybe a little bit more lost and like, or absorbed into like their own lives. But I feel like community can be built, you know, around a block or around like a small neighborhood. And I guess I don't know enough about this. Maybe it does exist for a lot of people, you know, who do live in cities, but it's changing my outlook and my judgment, you know, of big cities.
I think it's not about city versus small town or any of that. It's just about the mindset, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's really...
Yeah, when you go out on the street, do you say hi to the people you cross every single day?
If you live in an apartment building in a city, like, do you say hello to the people who you cross? Because you do cross the same people there too. But when we lived in the city, I just don't think I saw things that way, you know? I don't know that I even said hello to the people who I ran into regularly, or, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's fucked up. Like, looking back, I'm like, fuck, why did we like not?
But that's a mindset thing. Like there are people who are going to strike up the conversations, and in cities, those people are like, ugh, this guy again, you know? But it's like, oh no, he's like talking and having a conversation and like seeing you as a human being. Poor you.
Yeah,
that's so annoying. It's just what we're conditioned for.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. We've talked about like this idea of producing or directing a documentary about community.
Yes. Oh gosh.
How would you want to talk about it, or do you feel like it's something we're actually gonna make at some point?
Here's what, like this, you saying this stirs up this like familiar feeling for me, which is when something feels like right and in alignment and it keeps showing up for me. It's like, ugh, you want me to do this, don't you? And I don't know who you is. Like, is it the universe? Is it me? Is it my intuition? Is it just, you know, I don't know what that you is. But sometimes there's just something and it feels like it's being called to be like brought forth. And this documentary on community, it keeps coming up for me. And since we moved here and we've gotten like a taste of it, it's something we thought about doing even before we moved here, because community kept coming up like in conversations with people, and we're like, what a great topic to explore in a documentary. And then we move here and it's like, surprise, you're living in a community and experiencing what that means. And, you know, it's now a personal experience. So yeah, I feel like I would love to do that, and I love working on these kinds of projects.
Yeah.
So
I think my only resistance is about taking on something so big or potentially so big and just on our own, which is...
We've always done things on our own, though.
Exactly. Like the default of my default is to work solo. The next default is for you and I to work together. And, anything beyond that, obviously we've had a team, so it sounds kind of like absurd to say, but yeah, like my mind is not like wired by default to bring on people and to collaborate and to work on this kind of like big project.
So
together.
Ironic when you're talking about doing a documentary about community.
Exactly.
Yeah, you got to create a community to pull off the documentary about community.
So I can only imagine like the lessons, that could be drawn just by putting this together and knowing that we wouldn't be able to pull this off on our own. Mm-hmm. So I'm glad we talked about it. Maybe someone will hear this and it'll resonate and they'll reach out.
On that note though, like we've been talking so much about like productivity and doing things and projects and next steps in life, but I see like this future for me and probably for you too, but I don't want to speak for your future, but where our projects are like so varied, and it's like I could facilitate breath work in certain containers. I'm also preparing to host this journaling group with women in the new year, which I just launched and was kind of overwhelmed with all these people who wanted to participate. So I'll be launching that in the new year and taking that on. So I can see myself doing these like small group things and breath work and that, but I can also see myself like taking on photography projects and taking on like a documentary project. And it's so all over the place, it's so hard to define like, what do you do or who are you in a way that I can define you. But it's like, I am a person who like follows the places where I'm called and the things that bring me joy and the things that light me up and the ways that I want to serve. And it looks like all of these things. And like when I wrote the children's book and published the children's book, it was like, am I a children's book author now? It's like, no, I'm a person who has written and published a children's book and who loved it. And maybe I'll do it again sometime. But it doesn't have to like define who you are, or I am now doing this. And I think people are asking us a lot now, you guys moved to Costa Rica and you're suddenly posting a lot of spiritual shit on your Instagram page, and you're not really like the people we're used to seeing like show up on, as the photographers or as the business owners or as, in your case, the CEO, and you don't fit into those things anymore. And it's confusing for others, but like it's also confusing for us. Like it's okay to acknowledge that, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. But I'm excited about like a future where I can do all of these things that I love and like just have it be that. Mm-hmm. Like I'm really good at photography. I'm good at like visuals. I'm good at visual storytelling. Maybe that means I'm directing a documentary. Maybe it means I'm, taking portraits for entrepreneurs who are, starting their own like journeys. Maybe it means that I'm hosting small groups for journaling for women, like I'm saying. I'm just repeating myself now, but I don't know. I'm feeling it in real time right now. I'm manifesting and visualizing in real time.
Yeah, we are limitless, like you can do anything that you want, Mm-hmm. If you want to get a PhD in like chemistry, like...
God, no.
Obviously, but if
that's
you
just
wanted
not for
to,
me.
if you wanted to, like you could, sit down and do that. Like we have the ability to reinvent ourselves and to do more than just one thing, and that has been indeed fun to discover and acknowledge.
Yeah, it's so much more fun. Like you need to practice your flute.
I know, but I feel like the setting that we're in is like not excuses, yes, but I don't know, there's neighbors and like my fluting is not so good. So is that a word?
Fluting? I don't know. I feel like if you're going to learn the flute, you should learn
the lingo.
Playing of the flute?
Yeah. Obviously, you and I could speak for a very long time, as we do already. Did you have any questions that you wanted to ask? I know you had brought on this idea. You're like, haha, I'm going to lead the interview of
that's
your
not
own
how this
podcast.
went at all. You came with like a freaking list. And
I didn't even have a list. I had a couple notes, but I just let things go where they went.
I wanted to ask you what it is like to be using your voice on this podcast.
It feels good. Like as you've heard me say, like I've gotten more comfortable with it with every episode that I've done, and I feel a difference just in the way that my voice sounds in my body. I don't know if it sounds different externally, but internally to me it does, and there's less judgment as I'm speaking. So it's felt good, and every time I do it, I gain more and more confidence about it. And at the same time, it has allowed me to appreciate the times when I am more silent and just being like this like calm, quiet person who's able to hold silence in a space and not say too much and listen, even though I may struggle at times with you. But yeah, I feel like it's accomplishing what I set out to do, which is to just get more comfortable with my voice so that I can use it.
We've talked about this a bit, but I think it's like really very humbling to take something on the way you have with this that you don't necessarily think you're really going to excel at, or you're not like, I'm super good at talking, so I'm going to start a podcast. Like you were like, I'm not good at talking, so I'm going to start a podcast.
Right. Yeah, I always thought if one of us was going to start a podcast, it was going to be you, or, we were going to do it together, which I'm sure there might be a future where, we do more podcasting together, because that could be a whole angle and a thing. But yeah, that has been like, just like this old limiting belief that I had that my voice was not worthy of being heard or used, and that my relationship with my voice was a certain way, but actually it didn't need to be that way. I can't recall which limiting belief I was undoing at the time, but I remember specifically being like, wait a minute, if I'm able to undo this thing, I think I can also undo it with my voice. And like, I know, maybe I haven't spoken about it a ton, but I know what my relationship with my voice has been my entire life. Like how, just like how the idea of going to a party was like, oh fuck, like I hope Davina comes this way. Like I don't have to make as much of an effort to talk, or like we get separated at a party. I'm like, oh, where's Davina, so that I can like come back into like a comfortable position of, in conversation. And yeah, it's like those like micro things that would affect the way that I would carry myself, through life. Yeah, that I feel doesn't have to be that way anymore. And like we spoke, it's funny because like you and I spoke a ton, in our career as photographers. Like we taught workshops, we spoke at conferences in front of hundreds, sometimes thousands of people. And I would always love the experience, but I was always able to rely on you. Like I knew that if I had to do it alone, it wouldn't be the same thing. And as you know, like the one time I did do a creative class, I completely like blacked out for 10 seconds, and stalled and didn't know what to do. And in a way,
and you got out of it by admitting that you were like feeling things in that moment, right?
Yeah.
And you were live, like on air.
Yeah, that was like, it took me months to like get over that moment afterwards. And
I think they cut it out of the replay.
I don't know.
I think so.
But yeah, and today, like I would be able, like I'm just much more comfortable with admitting it. Like if I'm in a conversation with someone, or if I was presenting something and I stalled, I think I would just like handle myself with a lot more calmness, and I wouldn't get caught up in it as much. So yeah, my relationship with my voice has changed a lot, and I'm only like, this is episode 4 that we're recording. So I'm excited to keep going and to see where it goes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm proud of you. I think it's like it's a big undertaking for you, especially. And I think like everyone and their uncle is starting a podcast right now, but you're not like trying to compete with anyone. Like you're going into it really with like a humble and open heart, and just like, yeah, let's see where this goes. And
yeah. And I also know that you and I, like, we like to do things like with as much effort as possible.
Yeah, we like to do things well. Like, is that so bad?
I don't know. I don't think it's bad. I appreciate that about us. And so I can see like this podcast, like now I have momentum, and I feel like I'm going to keep going, and I can see it evolving into like an even better version of itself at some point. And so it's all very exciting, and I am proud of myself also for doing this.
It's just, the lessons are nonstop. And I think like, I don't know if I'm just, this is just coming through for me right now. I wonder if maybe that's just what you're struggling with right now. Is it's just like a lot that's being thrown your way in terms of like growth and lessons, and you just need like a minute to like absorb it and integrate it, because we touched on this before, but like with all of these misadventures we've had since we moved here, not even since we moved here, like in the last like 2 weeks, the car getting stuck, and like that's been like a worst case scenario. It's now in like a city like 4 or 5 hours away from here, and it's going to cost us like as much as it cost us to buy the car like a few months ago. And why is this happening? And there's been, Charlie had this like scalp infection that turned into like being almost, I won't say it was life-threatening, but could have been. It's just a lot of this stuff, and having to acknowledge like a lot of the lessons in these things.
Yeah. And when they happen too, we're like, why is this happening?
Yes.
Like we don't obviously,
like we're victims.
Yeah, we're obviously aren't offered the lesson right away. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it takes a few days, weeks, months, sometimes. So yeah, that does resonate with me, like the amount of information that I'm taking in and needing that time to integrate it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm going to go sit with it.
I can see that you need some gentle compassion for yourself.
Yeah.
I'm probably not like supposed to tell you what to do, just in general, but I see that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get offended when you tell me things about myself. Like I value your opinion and your outlook, and beyond myself, you are the person that knows me the best and sees me the most. So
yeah, likewise.
Yeah. So it's like a vulnerable place to be, but also to be cherished. Adds a lot of value.
It is vulnerable to be seen so much by someone. Yeah. We've gotten used to seeing each other as much as we do, and then to continue to see each other as we're changing and as we're growing, like you constantly need to be like, oh look, they just surprised me. Good for them. Yeah. With this podcast, like you surprised me in going for this and doing this, because as much as you had a certain idea of your relationship with your voice, I had gotten used to you having that relationship with your voice as well. So yeah, it's also a privilege to be able to see each other like as we evolve as well. And as much as these things could separate us, because you could be like, I don't like that you're changing, or I don't like this new version of you. Like as you grow and as you like continue to find like different ways to express yourself, and I don't know, it's cool to witness that too, and to like continue to be your partner on that journey.
Yeah. Likewise. Ditto. I don't know if you've heard me ask this of other guests, but
I try not to listen when you're recording because I want to jump in, and then I know that's not helpful. Yeah. So I tend to lock myself in the room and put headphones on and like do my own ecstatic dance practice.
Well, it was meant to be just a question for Dave, who was on the first episode, but now I've decided to just ask everyone, what does spirituality mean to you?
Oh, I want to have this like beautifully like perfect response. That's like, I see you ego trying to craft the perfect response. Spirituality to me means a connection to the deeper part of ourselves behind the ego, behind whatever identity we've created. It's going back to that source that's behind all of that, while also connecting to it in nature and in others. Because when you find it in yourself, you also can identify that it's at the source of just everything and everyone, and that we're all one. It's hard to say that and not sound cheesy, but yeah.
That was a beautiful and eloquent reply.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I think like through all of these practices, like, you know, when you do all of these things to connect spiritually, they take on a different significance, these practices. Like, I didn't used to practice yoga the way I practice it now, because now I practice it and it's a tool for me to connect to my own spirit, and you know, it changes everything. You can do everything from that perspective after. I feel like I'm going to be forever learning how to live life and from like that quote unquote spiritual place. And it's not about like laying out crystals and Instagramming your tarot card readings or whatever, you know, it's about like truly connecting to that. Not that there's anything wrong with those things. It's just all about what it means to you and how you're connecting to it. Like parenting spiritually, you know, all of that.
Yeah.
Everything can be a spiritual practice.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. You kind of forced me into it.
Yeah, I did. I was like, we're doing this right now.
Yeah.
I'm sure there will be other episodes together down the line. Where can people find you?
I'm at Davina Kudish on Instagram, and that's actually the only place that I'm still going as Kudish, which is your last name and not actually mine. But that's pretty much the best place to connect with me, or davinapalik.com is where I'm now going to be posting more and more now that I just redid my website. So any future journaling classes or any other things that I'm intuitively guided to start offering is going to show up there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And I love you.
I love
so
you.
much.
I love you.